meeting of the Reston Community Center Board of Governors. Absent and excused this evening are Mr. Keith and our distinguished chair, Beverly Caution, who will be back here next month. First thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Next is the approval of the minutes and the board actions of the April 4th, 2022 board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Next is the approval of the April 4th board actions.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Chair's remarks. Welcome to May. It's an exciting time.
A lusty month of May.
I don't have any brilliant poems of words of wisdom or anything at this point. So we
Can
will-
we welcome our Director of Communications?
we sure can.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce to our board members, Lorna Campbell Clark, who is our new Director of Communications. Lorna met Paul and Bill and Vicki and Dick at the Finance Committee meeting. So this is.
I'm Lisa, sorry my mouth's full. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And Bill Penniman.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Vicky, we didn't get a chance to say hi, truly. And this is Vicky's daughter, Rebecca, who is
Hi,
a
Rebecca.
professional filmmaker.
I've seen your name in all my charts.
Good. Very, very good.
Thank you.
All right. So introduction of visitors. We don't have any visitors this evening.
Lorna was our visitor.
She's a visitor? She's a staff member. She's not a
She's
visitor.
visiting us tonight.
Okay.
As a new staff.
Okay. All right. Next up is citizen input. We don't have any citizen input this evening. On the committee reports. Mr. Thomas, can you give us the May 2nd Finance Committee report and make the requisite motions, please?
In your binders, if you turn to the handout section, you will see the documents that we went through. The main things that we went through was sort of the statements, looking at the revenues and the expenses for, through March. Nothing really out of the ordinary. It looks like we will be returning about $900,000 to the fund balance for the natatorium stuff. But basically everything else is within tolerances. Things are, there's little deviations here and there. That we will probably keep 100,000 of the million or so that we're actually getting back for other possible capital issues that we might have to deal with, perhaps roof issues or some other minor, relatively minor things compared to the size of the natatorium project, but major compared to the size of sort of planned maintenance. And so that was a whole lot of it, and we had a robust, a decently robust discussion about the carryover. So I want to direct anyone who wasn't here for this to this page.
Which page is that? Does it have a number or anything?
Just pattern match. You got it. There's no number on it. Just look at the pictures. The third and fourth columns are yellow. The fifth through, okay, we're there. And Bill, I'm just waiting on Bill.
I know.
I want to make sure you get there.
It's all right.
You got it?
I got it.
Okay. So we walked through this, and basically, all right, a couple of things just to help you orient. The two yellow columns. The first one are codes. The second one is actually where the dollar numbers are. If there's no comma, it's a code and not a dollar figure, right? So we've got codes in the first yellow column, dollar figures in the second. So it looks like an increase in tax revenue based on increases in what we're expecting taxes to be. Plus, we also do have an increase in the arts education based on program restoration. But then we also have a bunch of other things that were done, looking in the blue, that are funding things that we are looking at, primarily restoring some things. One thing that's interesting is splitting off from the sort of program stuff, the events stuff, splitting it off so we actually have a group that focuses on doing things remotely. So doing things like the Shakespeare in the Park and things.
You mean off-site?
Off-site,
Not
not
remote.
remote, off-site. I know, off-site. Sorry.
Not remotely.
Yeah, not remotely, off-site. And so if we're doing off-site stuff, to make that really its own department essentially, that has its own management and its own group of people that's able to focus on doing things. Shakespeare in the Park took a lot of work by a lot of people, but what you really need is a core set of people that can carry over the institutional knowledge and the sort of the emphasis on doing stuff like that, the stuff at Reston Station, the stuff at perhaps other village centers, hopefully, but like doing those types of things that are off-site really takes its own separate set of skills and expertise and continuing knowledge. So that is represented in the workforce planning. That's the third from the last row. Workforce planning, community events. WFP is workforce planning. Community events. Those two lines represent that. That's the salary on the upper one and the benefits on the lower one. And most of the other stuff is restoring programs and a few other smaller things that are coming on. Changes to pay, new program coming in, the Ping Chong thing that's going to be filmed by Storycatcher. That's going to be really amazing because that's going to be playing out in a lot of contexts, and so capturing that as we go is going to be really good.
Question, Paul. So I'm listening. I'm getting. So is there going to be a different department under Kevin, those guys, or?
Kevin is the new leisure and learning department head.
Okay.
So we will advertise for a new community outreach and offsite department head, and the community events position that he is promoted from to the leisure and learning department chief will be a new employee in that position, and then there are 2 support positions that come
Okay.
under that. So we'll pull an entirely new position into the department head spot and bring 1 position over from leisure and learning, and the existing 3 positions that are in arts and events will be assigned to this new department, community outreach.
Okay.
So we'll put all the outreach under its own organizational unit.
That sounds very clever. I mean, we're putting together this really,
Great idea.
really neat. Yeah.
Great idea.
Wow. Okay.
And we'll need to double it now.
Yeah. So and then the committee had a motion that the committee passed that we need to sort of bring to here as well. So I moved that we have staff provide the fiscal year 2020 carryover package to the county as documented essentially here.
Is there a second?
I second
Any discussion?
Discussion, so
All
again,
those in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries.
Thank you. The last thing that we discussed, which was a more energetic discussion, was the fund balance estimate. And so the fund balance estimate, by the way, one thing, if you're like me, you're trying to do some math and the math isn't working out. There are a couple things, when you look at that last column, it says fiscal year 23 revised versus fiscal year 24. And you can't just subtract, because what's missing is this carryover stuff. So anyway,
When we publish this package, we'll put.
it'll be cleaned up. But just if you try to do the subtraction, let me know if you get lost, or let Lila know if you get lost, because you have to factor in the carryover stuff. Let's see. I think the biggest things that came out of this discussion, one, Dick had some concerns thinking that the tax revenue number is too conservative, is too low for where he thinks the number, because it depends on whether you think it's being conservative or not, is too low. And so Dick has some questions basically for the county tax people figure out how they're coming up with the estimates. The estimates are coming in around 6.5% higher.
6.25.
6.25 higher, instead of what Dick believes should be about 10% higher. So there's some discussion around that, so we'll see where that goes. So that was one thing that was discussed. I'd say one of the other big things that was discussed is staff is suggesting that we up the capital project reserve from 3.5 million to 7 million. Which is why, looking at the fund statement, if you look, the economic and program contingency fund goes from 2.2 million down to 0. That's because when the balance there, first you have to hit the maximums on the capital project reserve, and if you raise that maximum to 7, you don't have anything for the economic reserve. So all of that essentially gets clawed back from the economic and program contingency into the capital project reserve. So that's why there's that sort of that 0 there, because if you raise the cap on the capital project reserve, you have nothing to put into the economic and program contingency because of the way it's defined. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
We
don't.
The number in the FY24 column assigned to capital projects assumed the increase to a $7 million ceiling. So the assignment went first to the maintenance reserve at 12% of revenue, then feasibility studies at 2% of revenue, then up to 7 million to the capital project reserve, so we don't quite have 7 million in this budget, and then there's no excess to assign to
So it's mostly a
economic.
money shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a money shuffle, and with a bigger max built in to that capital project reserve. So one thing that we have requested is that staff, when sort of playing out this budget, also provide background for why do we need to move that capital project up to 7. If we get that, and the thinking behind this is, if we get a good explanation of why that 7 number is a better number than 3.5, then we can look at that, and as a board, we can look and say, yeah, we like that. That's a compelling argument, and 7 makes sense. Or we might decide, okay, you know what, I buy half of that, therefore, we're gonna pick another number, right? And so we'll see how it goes, but the way we get the full explanation is by directing staff to play out the budget with the 7 million cap for capital projects and providing the explanation so we can evaluate all of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And so then,
I bet 500, I'm happy.
yeah, no, that's a good batting average. But what it means then is, if we were to drop the capital budget, the money would mostly go back in.
Maybe, right? So just looking at this number, if we drop the capital project reserve to 6.3 million, we still would not have anything in the economic and program
Yeah.
contingency.
Got
If
it.
we dropped it to 6 million, we have 288,000. Right, you get the idea,
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
Then,
Okay. So first of all, does that make sense in terms of what we've got
Makes
here?
sense.
Again, the last column is sort of a little bit.
The last column,
crazy,
there's a
but
hidden column.
There's
that
essentially a
shows
hidden
the
column
period.
that's got this stuff in it.
Got it.
So,
there's a reason why I'm not in financial. I'm listening to you, I believe you,
okay, so what I actually want to do is, I move that we direct staff to develop the budget according to the guidance that was sort of projected here, including providing background information justifying any significant deviations from the current threshold. So the deviation for the 7 million for the capital project and anything else that is even somewhat out of the ordinary.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
And then just the final thing that we discussed in that context is there was some thought on the committee that having a more robust understanding of the tax situation and having good estimates there as well as understanding the needs. So that's on the sort of the supply side. And then on the demand side, what is it that we need to spend money on, sort of looking 5 years into the future, thinking about what happens with the our space at Lake Ann, what happens to other opportunities. That we also should have a discussion later on about what is the number that we would expect that we should recommend to the Board of Supervisors for the tax rate for the special tax district. So that's another discussion that would be downstream of some of the current things going on. People up from the Finance Committee, did I leave out anything substantial?
No, I just wanted to emphasize the last thing that you said, that I think it's important that the board discuss the broader and more distant future financial requirements of the community center, and do this in some detail. And so that we can have a more, a better discussion of the tax rate.
So I'd like to suggest then that we have a board meeting on June 6th, and I would suggest that we have a long-range planning committee meeting prior to that meeting on June 6th.
Yeah, it really is
at-
long-range planning.
At 6 or 6:30, I think 6:30, 90 minutes is a good solid time for discussion. So if we set long-range planning at 6:30 on June 6th, then I will bring back the materials related to the FY24 budget and longer-term outlook issues.
Sounds good.
I expect by then we can also have some data points with respect to some of the possible permutations of the Art Center.
Yeah, I think that should be part of the,
Right.
since we have to come to some agreement by July.
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
Going
the
forward,
goal will be to have a consensus of the board at the end of the public hearing on the 13th, so that from the 13th to the end of July, the county can respond appropriately to the problem.
Okay.
All right. Anything else with the Finance Committee? All right. So that's it for the Finance Committee report.
Is there a motion to approve the Finance Committee report?
So moved.
Second. Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for that complete, thorough Finance Committee report, Mr. Thomas. All right, board member input on activities. Mr. Penniman.
Let's see, I went to see the Shakespeare guys. I got Cheryl Curio Simon's new book, and I've read it and enjoyed it, and I recommend it. And I've done some task force stuff, and some stuff on the state building code. That's been sufficient.
What an exciting life you lead.
And hoping to get it behind me soon.
Dick?
Main thing that we did with respect to just RCC is the Shakespeare in Park, which we totally enjoyed. It was really, really good. We went
Did you see it on
Saturday,
Saturday?
which was good weather and a reasonable crowd. I don't know, what happened Sunday? Did they?
We got rained out
Yeah.
on Sunday.
It's great. And I would love to see more of that stuff. I think that's part of our program.
It's very expensive.
I'm sure. Does Robert pay some of those bills?
They did all the ground prep, they did a lot of prep for that, and they have manpower all around that
Yeah.
facility, so, yeah.
Bill?
Can I supplement? And
Sure.
that is, we can also some monologues, which is down at the first stage, and if you don't know anything about it, it's worth seeing.
What is it?
They're terrific.
It's a play, 3 single black mothers talking. And it's,
First stage in Tyson's?
Yeah.
Tyson's?
Tyson's, yeah.
Bless you. Vicky?
I attended the Founder's Day events. Was going to just drop in and ended up staying most of the day. And also enjoyed Cheryl's book. And that's it.
Lisa?
I attended Founder's Day, meant to go this weekend to Shakespeare in the Park, but.
It's actually theater in the
Yeah,
park.
I'm sorry.
Shakespeare in the Park is trademarked. So this was theater in the
My
park.
plan was to attend theater in the
Yes.
park, but I could not do it for other reasons, but I hear it was great, so I got read out Sunday, but that was it. But the Founder's Day had a lot more people than we thought we were gonna have, it was a nice event.
And you go walking on the bike path every single morning and run into me.
I have to clear that, yes. And you have
Paul?
too, Karen.
2 days in a row.
Founder's Day, it was great having a front row seat for Lila's dance performance. I saw, it was great. I can show you all pictures. Which, by the way, turned out stunningly well. Like, we started off, out there for Lila's dance performance, and then went into the Joanne Rose Gallery for a couple speeches, and then back outside. Like, it just sort of...
It was very sweet.
The weather was not great, but it actually
I
still
was
worked.
pulled onto that dance stage by that little girl. She was adorable.
And then I saw Reduced Shakespeare Company, Hamlet's Great Adventure, and then I saw Theater in the Park, which happened to have been a Shakespearean play. And I saw that on Saturday, and it was tremendous. Yeah, it's like 900 people. What's great is that if you average the 900 on Saturday and the 600 on Friday, you get to right about the number that we keep talking about for a performance center. Anyway, so that was that, right? And that performance center, which I believe would be climate controlled and would be safe from rain. So, there you go.
Thank you, Paul. I attended lots of meetings.
As usual.
Lots and lots of
That's kinda
meetings.
different for you, Bill.
Public budget meetings, meetings with the Board of Supervisors. We opened up the farmer's market on Saturday, and that'll continue through November. I did attend Reduced Shakespeare and got to see my friend Austin for the first time in a couple, 3 years, so that was fun catching up with him. And yeah, just lots of stuff. For your information, on May the 20th, there is going to be a volunteer hoedown at Frying Pan Farm Park for all Park Authority volunteers. We're gonna feed you and feed you and say thank you ahead of time. And this is an addition to the Ellie Doyle Awards that we'll do in November. So we wanted to do something outside where we could get everybody together. So come on out, 4 to 7 on May the 20th. All right.
Which is the same day as the first day of the Fine Arts Festival.
It may be. That's a whole nother end. All right, ma'am.
So I first want to remind everybody about the public art project that's being done at Dogwood Elementary School. RCC is a funding partner for that, and along with Public Art Reston and the Dogwood School community. There's an activity where you can meet the artist for that tomorrow from 5:30 to 7. Then we have the Pollinator garden dedication on Wednesday evening. That's this pollinator garden that RA and RCC are redoing and rededicating. And Ed Begley Jr. will be there, as well as Chairman McKay from the Board of Supervisors, and Reston's own Maddie White from Congressman Connolly's office. And I think, Bill, if you can swing by before your Park Authority meeting and sub for Bev, who's quarantining, to make remarks there. And then there are performances, the 14th and the 18th, and then of course the big Fine Arts Festival, May 20th, 21st, 22nd at Reston Town Center. In my reports, the only really highlight moments I want to call your attention to are the We are stymied with respect to solar panels. They're running into prohibitive cost issues, so they're going back to negotiate with the county. I know.
The process took too long.
I'm gonna wrap the roof in aluminum foil before I and generate, and at least fry some burgers on it, you know? We're gonna get there someday, I'm not sure how. We should be seeing a presentation on the Arts Center feasibility study as a function of our public hearing, so looking forward to that on June 13th. There were elements of Founder's Day that were connected to our equity efforts, the performers Unos Dos Tres Andres. In addition to the Founder's Day performance and the theater performance here, they also went to the school-age childcare program at Dogwood Elementary School and were a huge hit there. We gave 20 rides for RCC Rides in the month of April, and we're getting ready to launch a once-a-month women and girls only swimming option on Saturday evenings. This was something that was requested by our Muslim neighbors in the Opportunity Neighborhood Network of Communities. You've all talked about Founder's Day, the Theater in the Park event at Reston Town Square Park. I just want to give a shout out to our arts and events team because they really, really, really worked hard on that. They brought together Next Stop Theater as the producing company, but all of the logistics were worked out by Kevin and PD and the technical team in the Arts and Events Department. We had tremendous support from Western Town Center Association on the marketing side of things, as well as on making the facility look and perform beautifully. The Avant provided green room housing for the company the whole time. It took a week of rehearsals to make it look so beautiful and terrific when you saw it. So kudos to all of them, but PD and Kevin particularly. We've hosted Leadership Fairfax's first in-person program day for their reigniting of their in-person events. We had Neighborhood and Community Services Agency doing a staff retreat here. And our fitness and wellness team is working with the Hunter Mill District Office on the second tour to Hunter Mill. They will start and end in Vienna this year, so not quite as glorious for us, but wonderful nonetheless. Patrons are coming back to all of our programs. We are seeing increases in participation across the board. We are still working hard on the new website. We introduced Lorna to you tonight. We were part of a multi-agency audit of refund procedures and outcomes that were related to the pandemic. You might recall we refunded some $450,000 worth of interactions with us. And on all those thousands of payments, there was exactly one duplicate. And that wasn't even our staff's doing it. It was the Department of Finance making a duplicate payment we didn't ask them to make. So I'm very pleased with that result. And I go to meetings too.
Good. Very good. All right. Yes, you do. Any old business? Any new business? Happy May. Check your event schedule here at the bottom. And with that, we're adjourned.